I always think that we as coaches understand the importance of culture and how important that environment is, but we spend such little time in really investing it. So what we did is we had a deliberate plan. So we're allowed NCAA wise 4 hours on the court, 4 hours off the court in the preseason. Well, most people spend 4 hours in the court, 4 hours in the weight room. So what we decided to do is we took 1 hour every other week and we went to a classroom. And what we did in the classroom is we taught culture, leadership, what a good team does.
Welcome to the Cutting Edge Coaching Podcast, where we believe coaches are some of the most important teachers and leaders in the world, and they deserve to be supported. I'm your host, Luke Gromer, and every week we're bringing you conversations with coaches, experts, and leaders from across sports that will give you practical ideas and strategies that you can apply in your coaching to develop high-performing teams and high-character people. Coaches, I'm excited to welcome Coach Ben Wilkins back to the podcast. Coach Wilkins is the head men's basketball coach at Seton Hill University. He was formerly the associate head coach for Army men's basketball. In this two-part conversation, we dive into lessons Ben learned taking over a program, including how he left his previous job well, priorities when he took over a new program, establishing a culture in year one, evaluating your roster, working with your assistants, and more. As always, if you enjoy this episode and you want to grab a copy of the free podcast notes, just go to cuttingedgecoach.com/podcast or click the link in the show details to download a free PDF of notes from this episode or any episode of the podcast. And coaches, I'm running the second Film for Coaches workshop with Doug Lamov on Wednesday, May 3rd at 12:05 p.m. Central Time. We're going to take a deep dive into how to use film effectively to improve the learning and performance of your team. The workshop is 90 minutes long and includes rules of thumb for using film effectively, examples of film sessions, a Q&A, and more. Spots are limited and it's already filling up. You can grab your spot at filmforcoaches.com and you can see what coaches from the previous workshop had to say about their experience. Now to my conversation with Ben Wilkins. Enjoy the show. Will you talk about the challenges and maybe even some of the things that you guys did as a staff when it came to really establishing the culture that you wanted when you took over, beyond what we talked about at the beginning with those meetings, parent contact, all that stuff? After that, what did you guys do to try to build the culture that you have envisioned?
Yeah, staff. We got Jamal Stokes and Connor Levity, two really good assistants that work with us. We work together, and I always think that we as coaches understand the importance of culture and how important that environment is, but we spend such little time in really investing it. So what we did is we had a deliberate plan. So we're allowed NCAA wise 4 hours on the court, 4 hours off the court in the preseason. Well, most people spend 4 hours in the court, 4 hours in the weight room. So what we decided to do is we took 1 hour every other week and we went to a classroom. And what we did in the classroom is we taught culture, leadership, what a good team does. And we had an intentional plan. Each one was different. Most of them had maybe a video. We went from a Kobe Bryant to Theo Epstein. If people want a great one for a team, Theo Epstein's commencement speech at Yale is elite. If you want to talk about team and roles and all that to share to your team, it's about 12 minutes. It's really good. So we talked about that. And then the key to those discussions, Luke, they were discussions. They weren't Ben Wilkins sitting there saying, hey, this is gold. It's, hey, what makes a good win? What you've been on winning teams, guys. What makes a winning team? Take 2 minutes to write it down. They'd write it down and then they'd start talking. And I just got out of the way, and I think one thing with us, Luke, is a lot of coaches I hear say our guys don't talk enough. They don't lead enough. And my question that I learned at West Point is, are you giving them enough experience and opportunities to talk and to lead? So in those meetings, we'd give an avenue and we'd just say, go. And, we had a discussion and I don't even remember how exactly we're talking about good leaders. Someone said, hey, coach, can a leader be a great leader if he only does it by example? He's not vocal. And then the next thing you know, our guys played tennis for the next 20 minutes on that topic, and they kept building on each other. And I just stood there and listened. And they were really thinking through it. They were getting to know each other. They were opening up. And then finally one goes, Coach, what do you think? And then I was like, "What? I'll give you what I think, but I'm not God up here. I'm going to give you what I think, but all your ideas are really good." And so we had those avenues and those culture meetings to talk about a lot of the things that we were going to face before we faced them. So now what we did is we have terms in situations that we can come back to during the season. So Tim Kite, who does Focus 3, who's really good in culture, they have something called, there's two things in life, basically. There's opportunity and there's adversity. And the beautiful thing of opportunity and adversity, they're intertwined. So if you have great opportunity, there's some adversity within that. We talk about our team and we just say, hey, what does that mean? And one of our guys said, well, I'm a college basketball player with scholarship. So that means like I have pressure of practice. I got to perform. I have all this. So there's adversity within that opportunity. So, like the second game of the year, Drew Green is one of our best players, was out. So I just walked in and said, hey guys, what is the two things in life? And they're like opportunity and adversity. So we have adversity because Drew's not in. So how, opportunity for our team. Someone gets to step up, somebody gets a new role. And then, hey, Drew, what's the opportunity for you? I can be a great leader. I can coach my guys. I can have energy. And then Drew, when we were talking as a staff before we get in the huddles, Drew, the kid who was hurt, came in. He was leading all the huddles. He was leading. But some of that stuff was foundational before we just, if I came in pregame and said opportunity adversity, I'd be, Coach, what are you talking about? Like, so we'd come back to certain sayings that we had all the time. And I think that's the other thing, building culture, Luke. You can't get bored. No different than on the court, you can't get bored with the fundamentals. You can't get bored with the same messages set different ways all through the year. And our team's going to hear opportunity and adversity in their 4 years here because it's so true. And then it just comes back to things you can do. So we were very intentional with our culture. And other thing that I like that we did, and I actually stole some because you talked a lot in podcasts about this. End of practice. Again, guys hear me talk enough. So how we ended practice was, okay, who are the culture guys of the day? Well, the first time we did it, Luke, no one said anything. They're not that comfortable talking yet. And I just sit there. And eventually one or two guys talk, and then they say, hey, Luke was great today. He really uplifted me. Um, then everybody wants to be praised. So now the next time, more people are talking in practice, more guys are uplifting each other. Now more hands go up. And now we've built that culture of everybody wants to be praised. And sometimes it's, hey, Luke was really hard on me today because I wasn't bringing it. And I appreciate him being hard on me because I needed that. Now you're more likely to get on me next time. And I know that we both know that's on the right direction. So we'd end practice with them talking. And then most times I'd say, hey, great job, guys, just bring it in. They didn't need to hear me. Let them decide that. And I'll give you another example, and I know I'm rambling for a while here, but another example was after some practice drills. Instead of me bringing it and say, hey, Red, you won because you did this. White, you lost because you did this. Hey, Red, why did you win? Let them talk. They would give the answers. And then if there's something else I needed to say, but most times they knew the answer. Hey, White, why did you lose? They give the answer, and then they're starting to come to, okay, this is why we win. This is what we have to do to win. Just having avenues that they talk, I lead it, but I get out of the way. And I think that's something that's really important that maybe I've learned a lot this year. As the year went on, I got out of the way more, Luke. Maybe early on, and maybe you do need early on, you need to be there a little bit more. But I got out of the way, and next year I'll get the way even more. Like some of those leadership members next year, some of our guys will lead them themselves, and they'll spend some time with me and let one of those players lead it. So that's some of the things we did culturally. That I thought was really beneficial. But I think you got to have phrases, you have to have concepts that you come back to before the hard times happen.
That's really good stuff. Some great practical examples there that, yeah, any coach can take that and use. One of the other things that I'm curious about is your coaching staff. And like you've talked about, this was your first head coaching job. So one of the big differences now is that you're leading the whole staff. You're the guy in charge. So a couple questions. One, what's your coaching staff like? How many coaches you have? Two, where did they come from? Did you have prior relationships with them, or were some of them already on staff and you kept them? What was that whole thing like? How did you make those decisions? And then how did you, yeah, create an environment with your staff that helped build that vision where they were an important part of the program too, felt like they were valuable assistants and gave them opportunities to be coaches, not just flies on the wall.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time understanding what I was going to do when the first time I could hire staff. And I really believe in that you want to hire soft skills, train hard skills. So for me, in the whole process of hiring people, I want to make sure I had high character guys that have positive energy, that have a motor, that they're going to work pretty hard. Um, so and that so they can solve problems. So like those are the intangible things that I was looking at because it's really hard to change someone's character traits. So I really stayed the course with that, and then I didn't worry about hey, did they know how to guard a ball screen. I felt like I could teach them how to do that. I was worried about hiring the right person, so I went really long to hire my staff, Luke, because I knew there I needed to get the right people. So it ended up being until August until we were all together, even though I got the job sometime in April, because I wanted to get the right people. And I got two great guys, two rock stars. They're terrific. They hit that character. I mean, talk about positive, upbeat. The guys love them. They know what they're doing. They bring the energy. They get better. So I wanted to make sure that we had the right character traits with our guys. I didn't know either of them beforehand. Now I did know somebody that knew each of them, so it was trusting some of my buddies that knew them. Um, so that's one thing that I really liked is just understanding you've got to get the right people, and then for them, we have an offensive defensive coordinator. So Jamal does the defense. So he kind of helped me with the zone a lot, looking at ideas, doing scouting reports. They're the ones that give scouting reports of either defense or offense to the team. So I sit back. And then for them, I'll critique them a little bit. The team will leave and say, okay, what could you have done better here? And I try to help them out as well. I'd say the one area I probably failed the most as a coach year one was helping them more than I wanted. I didn't help them as much as I wanted to, Luke. And what I know as an assistant, I was really, really good at that. I just had more stuff coming at me this year that I was learning. So it was almost like I was trying to keep my head above water. It's an area I know I got to get better in year two is to help them grow more than I did. Um, but we make sure in practice, and I told them early, I want your voice, talk, stop practice. So they got a lot better with that. And even in the spring workouts we have, what I'm doing in the spring workouts, I'm observing a lot more. They're planning the practice, they're running the practice. I'm sitting back and making sure I'm really looking at big picture stuff and letting them get more experience. They need more experience coaching. They're both younger, which I have no problem with. And we talk about perspective at the beginning of this podcast. My wife helped me with perspective. Sometimes I'm harder on them than I should be, Luke, because I'm seeing them as Ben Wilkins 20 years into this business and like, why can't they understand this? Because they're 2 years and Ben Wilkins 2 years wouldn't have understood it either. So I'm a lot harder on them than the players. But they're awesome and they've been super supportive. And I got two really good coaches and I'm lucky to have them. And but I want their ideas. Connor Leverty does underneath out of bounds. He calls underneath out of bounds for us. In the games, he makes the play calls. Like, I want these guys to be empowered to coach. Because in games, I feel like my biggest job in games is to be a sports psychologist. So the more I can get away from the X's and O's, the more I can coach the people. I'm excited the guys we have, and I'm excited that we now have this offseason together that I can help them become better coaches.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I appreciate your honesty there in it too. And it makes sense, like you talked about towards the beginning of there were just the decision fatigue, some of those things that come with being a head coach that took up your time, right? And took some of your energy away from maybe an area where you want to invest more into those assistants that you have. Yeah, I think that's insightful. And then yeah, just the recognition that okay, in year two, this is something I need to I need to focus on. And I'd be interested to know a little bit more about what your what your overall reflections were, and then well, we've talked a lot about that, but really, I guess what I'm getting at is I want to know what you're thinking now going into year two. So year one is in the books, and if you want to share how that wrapped up and ended, feel free to. But then now, as you're looking at year two, where are your priorities for that?
Yeah, I'm really proud you're one of what we did. More not the wins and losses. That's great. We all want to do that, but I'm more proud how we did it. We built an unbelievable foundation with a culture, and again, we got the previous coaches brought unbelievable young men into our program, so they made it a lot easier to build that foundation. And now moving forward, Luke, a little bit of when we have the meetings with our players after the year. Again, a lot of questions and listening. And one of the questions that I really liked is like, okay, what went well this year, and then asking kind of why. to see the themes of, okay, what did we, because as coaches, we always think we know, but like, what are the players feeling? That's more important, what they are feeling and they're perceiving. And then, hey, what do I do well to coach you? And then what do you need to do better? Because even the well quotient's good, because to make sure I continue to do these things, and then asking those guys, hey, what challenges are we going to see in year two that we didn't see in year one? Because I'm already learning that, okay, I'm perceiving that year two, some of the challenges we're going to face is, okay, year one was a little bit easier. It was a honeymoon phase when the talking about culture, because they weren't very good, and it's easy. Hey, we're going to buy in. Now year two, okay, I might have sacrificed a little bit more for the team. Am I willing to do that again if my role stays the same? Do I have that same perspective? Now we won 16 games. Everybody's saying, "Oh, you're going to win 20. You're going to do this." Can we keep the same mindset of our only goal is to win the next possession? Like, that's all we're trying to do. Can we win the next rep? Can we stay in that mindset? That's going to be harder in year two. So I'm already thinking about those leadership development program that we have. Okay, what obstacles are we going to face? How do I make sure I'm addressing those issues? We're going to bring in talented young men that are freshmen. Okay, where do they fit into the equation? And then I'm really looking at, as we evolve basketball wise, how do we continue to utilize our players' strengths, hide their weaknesses with new players on our roster, and then trying to make sure we keep the same edge. Not being not realize, like, hard work. The reward for hard work is more hard work, right? Look, that never ends. So, like, understanding, like, whatever we did last year, it doesn't matter now. Like, we got to go hard in August. We got to do this, and then so it's just making sure that I'm really looking and seeing, okay, what pitfalls are we going to face? Let's talk about them before we're in those pitfalls. That's kind of where my mind is right now, and those at the end of the year meetings have helped me realize, what couple things that our guys said, and one of the things for our coaches, it sometimes, like, I think I'm easy to play for, but all of our players said, "Coach, you tell us the truth," and, like, there's no sugarcoating it, and we love it. And that's where I think sometimes people miss that in, like, a player. I think I'm a player's coach, and I'm pretty sure I am. The guys like playing for me. I'll be honest, they like playing for me. It's fun stuff. But I tell them the truth. Like, but I'm just like, "Hey, Luke, that was a bad rep. Like, that was horrible. Like, you got to do this," and then I walk away. But then when you make a great rep, it's, "Hey, that was awesome." I get excited with that too. So I got to make sure that I continue to tell the guys the truth, whatever that truth is, and I think that's something that's really important as a coach. But doing it in the right way. I think our job is to do it the right way. I don't know if that has to do with next year, but that's kind of where my mind is right now. How do we keep, and not worrying about this last year. I'm also worried about myself, Luke, because there's also a piece I'm worried about the team, and then I'm also doing a little journaling and thought, hey, what does Ben Wilkins' pitfall is going to be? Do I worry about, do we need to win 16 more games? Do I worry about some different stuff, right? So for me, year one might be easier too, because there was no pressure, quote unquote pressure from the outside. We won 4 games, we're going to win more than last year, right? So now how can I still have the same process driven over results? Like, it's going to be harder for me. And so making sure that I'm doing the things that I did this year that maybe gave us some success, and some of the same challenges our team face, I'm gonna face as a head coach here too.
Yeah, totally. I think what you shared around telling our players the truth is important. I think it's doubly important right now in our current context, where I think a lot of coaches are afraid of that. Right? It's hey, and like you said, it's important how you tell them the truth. Right? It's not a license to be a jerk to your athletes. Tell them the truth and be yeah, yeah. I'm not going to use the word I want to use right now. It's not a license to do that, and we still have to be willing to tell them the truth. That's one of the things when I took over the teams I took over last year at this time, or a couple months from now. I said from them, "Hey, what do you need from me to be successful?" That was one of the first things I asked them, and they said, "We want you to tell us the truth." And that was the best moment ever too, because it was like, I got them now, man. They told me they want the truth. Now I can give it to them. And I had to, in that those first few practices, I had to pull kids and say, I got to be honest with you. You make terrible decisions when you drive it in. And, oh yeah, I know. I'm like, yeah, because you drive it in, your head's down, and you're driving it way too far. Just pass it out sooner. Like, oh, okay. And that kid's one of the best driving kids we have now, right? He drives in and he kicks it out quick. But it's like, kids' development is hampered if we don't tell them the truth. And I think sometimes we can be scared because we're thinking, oh, they're going to leave, they're going to transfer, they're going to not like it. But if you have that relationship with them, that they know that you're there to help them grow, it's such a big piece of it, man. Do they believe and they trust you that you're really there to serve them and help them? And then it's a lot easier for them, not always, right? Sometimes it's hard for them to hear, but it's a lot easier for them to take that truth and act on it when they know that we're giving it to them because we care and because we want good.
And I would jump in there, Luke, because I think what you did was beautiful too, though, because you told them what you need to do better. And I think sometimes as coaches, they'll yell, "Hey, you can't do X." Well, okay, he knows not to do X. Tell him to do Y instead. Like we have to help these kids. That's our job to give the solutions. You said, "Hey, give the ball up early." It's like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." He's not trying to turn the ball over. He's not trying to make bad decisions, but you got to let him know. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like it's tell them the truth, but then also help them get better. What is the solution to get better? Because that's our job. That's what we're getting paid now. If they need help. And I'd also say with the anger piece is when it comes to emotions, we can only feel one emotion at a time. So most times as coaches, we feel fear because we might lose or people are looking at me or whatever. That fear turns to anger. And then we want to get that anger out of our body. So we unleash on our players. Well, really that anger starts at fear. And we want to get rid of the fear. So we got to be willing to sit with that fear sometimes as coaches. And a lot of times I think when we leach out, it's because of fear. And I know sometimes, hey, I did it this year a couple times, and I would reflect after games and say, Ben, you were scared. Like you yelled at that kid, not because he turned the ball over, because you were scared you were going to lose the game. I'm really trying to get to where, hey, I can go through a year and be able to control my emotions better. But I think that's important for coaches to see. Like when you yell, is it making the problem better or is it making you feel better? And that's the question you got to ask yourself. Because there's times, hey, if your team's not playing hard enough and you need to jump them, okay, sometimes that when it comes to effort works. When it comes to skill, it needs to be a solution based. Hey, how do you solve that skill problem?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm challenged by that too. My my team's Achilles heel this last year. One of my team's Achilles heel was, just turnovers and poor passes, and like I try to be a pretty emotionally controlled, but I was not great at it this last season times because there were times where there's 4 straight possessions and we just threw a pass to the other team, and I'm just flabbergasted on the sideline and frustrated. But it's such a great way. The question you ask is such like, is this helping anything? Is this about me? Why am I actually experiencing this emotion right here? I think that's an important thing for us to ask. The last topic that was on my mind that I want to hear about is recruiting. I'd love to know your priorities and challenges in the first year when it came to recruiting. You talked about when you first came in, you told, "Hey, guys that are here, you're our guys. You're our guys. We want you here, and we believe in you." But then at the same time, what were you doing as far as recruiting and to try to bring this long term vision of your program to life? Because a big piece of that, especially at the college level, is you got to get the right kids there. So, what were your priorities and challenges in year one with recruiting?
Yeah, year one, same thing as hiring staff. Making sure that we get the right kids. So we love guys that are high character, that are driven, that really want to be good. They love the game, and then they want to be part of a team. So we start there, and then we needed to bring in some pieces. And one of my North Stars, Luke, is we're going to build this thing to last. So every decision I made year one was, is this the best decision for the long term of Seton Hill? So everybody's telling me you got to, actually, everybody, your friends and coaches say you got to bring portal transfer kids in, and you got to do this. And they only won 3 games, and I'm like, we brought 3 high school kids in, and within that, again, I was slow. There was a lot of kids I looked at, and I was challenged. There's a local kid that's really talented, who probably averaged 18 and 9 for us, a transfer to Division One. And I talked to one person and said, "You don't want to coach this kid," and that was tough. I'll tell you what, Luke, that was tough because you're sitting there saying at the time we didn't have a 5-man coming back and saying, "Oh, this kid get 18 and 9," and I had to stick to my core, and I'm so glad I didn't. And then what happened is one of the kids that wasn't going to play basketball anymore, he got wind of our new program that was here, was a good player, was a starter, and said, "Hey, you need to give coach a chance." And this kid stayed with us, and he ended up coming back to our program. So we ended up recruiting a 5-man in our program because he just liked the direction of the program. And then I trusted coaches I knew because I was a little bit of time crunch. So the 3 coaches, the players that we brought right from Indiana, played from Kentucky or Connecticut, and a player from DC, I've known the coaches. So I could watch the film. I could make sure that I knew that the character matched up because I was more worried about bringing the right kids in than the necessarily the best players. I think all three are going to be really good in our program. Kid from Indiana, Gabe Gillespie, is going to be really, really good as a backup. He's a backup big now, but he's got a chance to be special. And then James Rice from DC played a decent amount as a freshman guard. And then Brian Blade's going to be good, getting better and better. So I wanted to make sure that we brought the right kids in for our culture. And then we're a development program. So we want guys to stay 4 years. So part of it for me is recruiting the parents, recruiting the coaches, getting people that stay the course and stay with the programs they're at. And then our next recruiting class, Luke, again, that challenged me because now all of a sudden, people said, oh, if you bring one transfer in, I'm like, I want to build it through high school kids. And I can't change with that mold right now. And so we've gotten 3 kids committed right now. We're looking to bring 2 more kids in. And some of the things that are important for me is, like, we got a kid from Baltimore who I love. He stayed at the same school for 3 straight years, then a 4th straight year when other people were trying to recruit him out. And that program hadn't won. And then he flipped it to where they won his senior year. He stayed loyal. So what that tells me is that kid's going to stay with us as we get him better. So for me, it's making sure that because we want to recruit high school kids, that we got to make sure that these kids want to stay somewhere 4 years, right? And we know there's outliers everywhere. But let's talk about the normal kid because I'm going to stay with the kids. We want to develop guys. We want to get them better. So for me, it's making sure that we're finding the right fit culturally first because the previous regime brought great kids in, and we can't err from that. And it's got to be that. And there's been many times that I've gotten a phone with a kid and said, he's not us, right? And it's like, that kid isn't us. And then there's other kids I get on and say, I love that kid. He's about the right things. And like my favorite question to ask a kid is, tell me about yourself as a player. Some kids, rightfully so, will start saying, I shoot, I dribble, I pass. Well, okay, that tells me you're thinking about yourself as a player that way. And if I ask some other kids, I'm really coachable, I'm a leader, I want to win, I'm competitive. Okay, that kid's wired. His first things about a player is about the right things. So I have a lot of open-ended questions I ask in recruiting, and I'm very picky in recruiting. I'd rather take a less talented kid that is going to work really hard, fit in, wants to get better, and his junior and senior is going to be way better than that talented kid that leaves after a year or two. So for us, we're a development program. We're going to build it through high school kids. I'm more convinced today than I was 12 months ago that we can do it here in the PSAC, a great league, doing it this way. And I think it also helps our culture because, everything for me comes back to your culture. If you always bring kids on top of other kids there, you show no loyalty to kids already in your program. You're basically saying, hey, every year we're just going to bring new guys over top of you. We don't really care. You're here. And the other thing about our culture is next year, our returners can teach our culture to the young guys. And the biggest part of your culture is the guys in the locker room. So if I'm always bringing new guys in, our culture is just always relying on Ben Wilkins being the message guy. I want to make sure that our players can relay that culture. So we're a high school driven program. I believe you can win, and I believe you can win big that way. I'm excited. We got 3 kids coming in, and we're close on 2 more that I'm excited. All high school kids.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing your perspective and philosophy on it and how you guys are going about it. Well, Coach, this has been awesome. Before we wrap it up, just share with the listeners where they can connect with you if they would like to.
Yeah, I mean, the best way is my cell phone, 757-813-8964. Anybody can call, text, I don't care. I have a Twitter. I couldn't tell you what it is. It's like Coach Ben Wilkins, I think, Luke. I don't know. But I'm open. I love I love the craft of coaching. I love doing this. And I'm also a person, man. I reached out to Chris Peterson, the head coach of Washington, was the head coach of Washington football. He's become a mentor to me. He helps me. My goal, I'll help other people. My whole thing is if someone ever reaches out to me, I'm going to help that person if I can. So anybody listening, if I can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out. I love coaching. I love everything about it. And I also know when I talk to somebody else about coaching, I get way better than the other person probably listening to me talk. So that's the best way to reach me. My email's on the website. I don't even know what it is, but I prefer a text over an email.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. And coaches, you can go listen to our previous conversation on the podcast as well. I can't remember the number of the episode off the top of my head. I think it was in the 50s, but Go check out that previous conversation with Coach Wilkins for a lot more good stuff as well. Ben, I appreciate you a lot. Thanks for taking the time to
Thanks,
talk.
Luke.
Coaches, thanks for listening to this episode, and a huge thanks to Coach Wilkins for joining me. You can find links to connect with Ben in the show details. And don't forget to check out the show details for links if you'd like to get access to the free podcast notes or register or learn more about the upcoming Film for Coaches workshop. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We'll see you next week.